we're talking about inflation and we're talking about interest rates and we're talking about cost of living. If you look back like into the 40s and 50s, right? The homes were how big?
Oh, dude.
Oh yeah, much
Well, you guys are in Austin.
What?
Right?
Yeah.
The
1,000 square foot house,
yes,
maybe,
the average
right? Yeah.
home that our grandparents lived in and great-grandparents lived in. I mean, that's probably something you could look up too, Brett, is like, what was the average home size in the 40s?
Yeah.
And they got that house full of kids too.
And they had it full of kids, but you had
There you go.
People
right
sharing
there.
rooms. People sharing
Yeah.
rooms, dude. Like,
Median
median
home
price. The price was $7,000.
well, but I would say but to your point, it's more about the size.
It's more
Maybe
about
not
the
price.
size.
The
What
size.
I'm saying is not the
yeah.
cost. What was the size? Because
Look at that,
983
1,000 square feet.
so look at that, guys.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the average house in the 50s was 983 square feet. Guys,
And the average household was almost 4 people. Now it's 2,500 square feet, and the average is 2.6
2.6
people.
inches.
More
Look at-
places
guys,
to
look
hide.
at that.
You can hide
Yeah.
from your family, dude.
Yes.
And I don't know
Yeah.
about you guys, but we had that family when I was in high school that you'd always go over to their house and party or have fun because
Yeah.
it was a huge house. The entire upstairs was for the
Yep.
kids.
Yeah.
So it's like, sweet, I'm going to go over there and do all the things I can't do at my house.
Exactly.
And my brother and I were talking about it, and we were like, when we have families, we're never going to have a house so big that your kids can hide from you.
yes.
Yeah. I love that you guys picked up on that. At
Yeah,
that age, too.
because that's one thing that people need to be conscious of. But with this, we are a slave to the system as far as materialism. Everybody's got to have a bigger house. Everybody's got to, because we're all in competition.
Exactly.
We all see it.
One big
We're all
competition.
influenced. So we all have, the houses need to get bigger. The cars need to get, you only have a 2-car garage? Wow.
What a peon. Yeah.
This guy's got 6. Hello. He also has the car lift where he can put the 2.
right.
But back then it was like, dude, you had 1 car, maybe 2. You didn't even have a garage. It was
Yeah.
a 983 square foot home.
Yep.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, it's a very, very different time.
So we're working like slaves to live like kings.
$18,000 per year, the amount Americans spend per person on non-essentials, according to a survey by Ladder and One Poll, as reported by Vox.
$18,000 per year.
on stuff that you don't need.
And look,
That's
there's
crazy.
325 million Americans.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money blown. Daniel, I want to talk with you about one thing too. The perception of failure. Because I'll tell my own story here. I've worked in the film industry for a while. One of the first big jobs I got, I was so excited to get. I was being paid great for, and it was a disaster on every front. It was a mess on every front, and I failed downward hard. And when I can look back on it, I can see it was from me really not vocalizing and doing what I wanted to do with the project versus, being in a group of people who were much more experienced, much older than I was, who told me you ought to be doing it this way, and me listening to that. So now I feel like I'm at a point where I can walk away from that failure and say, okay, I learned this and I learned this and I learned this. So next time, that's not going to happen again. And sure enough, next time it didn't happen again. That we put a lot of weight on ourselves for things that we call failures. What does that look like on your end, and how, to you and your best advice, how do you fail upwards?
Well, I
Because
feel like
I think that you certainly have.
I feel like there's a common denominator that we're all sort of confronted with as men, in the Western culture, which is, do I decide to listen to that still small voice, or do I decide to listen to the external circumstances? Because what you just said is, do I do it the way I want to do it, or do I do it the way that the voice is telling me to do it?
Yeah.
And it's really funny because we were, part of this incubator, and we had external investors and people, and a lot of people, telling us how to do something, how to go forward in the business. And they were like, we know that you guys, love God, and that's great, but we need you guys to kind of like soften that and take him out, because really, in order to be truly successful, you really can't have God in your
gotta
business.
appeal to everybody.
You gotta appeal to everybody. You can't take God in. And so listen, I own it. Like, we capitulated to that, and we didn't listen to what we wanted, in our hearts knew to be the right thing to do. And we allowed, you know what I mean? Again, it wasn't, nobody took it from us. I allowed, is the priest in my household, I allowed that to happen. And that was the beginning of the end. It was only a matter of time before, you know, we just slipped into the nether regions of this world. And so the takeaway that I had from that was, if you have been anointed, or if you've been called by God to serve and function in his army and for a purpose, a specific purpose, you're the hand, you're the arm, I'm the lips, whatever, you've got your role. Keep that first and front and center, because he will supernaturally lift you and quantify your work. Every Bible hero was undersized and underprepared to do the work that they had to do. There was nobody, it wasn't Goliath going and facing Goliath. It was a little kid with 5 smooth stones and did the work. And in every scenario, I mean, the tribe of Israel is the smallest, least, capable, quote unquote, but yet they, birthed the Messiah. So like, you are capable if, and it's a causation, not a correlation, if you do what he says. And so that's my takeaway, is I will never again ask God, hey God, I need, I'm going to do this on my own now. Can you just, I'm sorry, hey, it's nothing personal, but like, I need to go and, make the world happy. And that's the mistake that I feel that if I learned anything from it, it was that. Don't leave him out.
Yeah. I mean, it's really important, I think, to go back to what kind of happened and kind of identify, where did this go bad? What happened that made this thing fall apart? I mean, I spent like years looking at that, but man, that's deep.
But it burns so hard, But the thing is, for me, and I wish I was different. I wish I was a guy who learned from joy and not from pain. I learned from pain a lot harder than I do from.
Man, I feel like I do too.
That's it. I mean, that's everybody. But it's when you're in the valley, man. You feel closer to him.
Yeah.
It just, because it's the pain is like, I don't want to be there again, and it's a motivator. And so for me, like, it was like, again, it was the best of times and the worst of times. It was best because now that is just something that is so ingrained in me, that I don't ever want to be alone again in that season. And I walked away. Like, it wasn't him. I walked away. And so, that's the thing. So whatever, he puts before us to do, we keep him center. And we do, and we're obedient to him, because that's the way, obedience, or success follows obedience, in my humble opinion. Success follows obedience.
Yeah, man. Amazing.
Look at your kids. You know what I mean? It's that, like, we get to play a microcosm role of God in our kids' lives. And so we get to see how he looks at us by how we look at them,
Yeah, I know. I think that's always so beautiful. Like, once we had kids, I really saw my relationship with God in a very different way. It's like, oh man, I see like why you didn't allow X or Y or Z to happen to me. You were protecting me the same way that I protect my own kids. So